A man whose Bible is falling apart probably has a life that's not. So today we're talking about overthinking, all right? As a mental health therapist, this is the number one thing that people come to me about. And I think if you asked any therapist, overthinking is the number one problem that people want relief from. It's just across the board, especially these days with everything that's going on in life. So I'm the type of therapist where I used to be a coach, so I'm going to give you some steps. And I don't want you to take every single step, but we're going to look at Gideon's life because I've found just in helping people and just really just trying to help myself, because I overthink a lot too, I found that Gideon's life, it tells us some things that probably he shouldn't have been doing, that were putting him in a worse spot, but also some things that he did do that we can learn from. So I want to take some of that because I've just found Scripture itself and the verses themselves and the principles from it, they help me and the people that are also sitting in front of me. So we'll go into that. And by the way, I'm Trey Tucker. I am a mental health therapist, and this is Rugged, where we're making your 20s and 30s legendary. So I'm taking two worlds that may not seem like they fit together at all, and I'm combining them. Because what I found is there's a lot of overlap. I mean, all truth is God's truth, whether that truth comes from the Bible or from some other source. If it's true, I believe it came from God. So we're taking worlds that people probably don't see as together, but I'm going to show you how they do fit together. So there's a verse that's pretty famous, at least in the scripture world. It's, so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Now, here's the thing. That is a fantastic principle, but good luck just like snapping your finger and doing it. Like, oh yeah, don't worry about tomorrow. That's like, yeah, thanks for that gem of wisdom, right? But if we look at people's stories like Gideon, like people that are more modern age, we can find how to actually keep our mind on the present day so that we don't worry about tomorrow. So that's kind of the foundational idea of this story. And if Gideon had that verse at the time, I think he would probably say, oh yeah, here are the things that I did right and wrong in order to accomplish what that scripture is telling us. So let's talk about overthinking for a second, and I'll tell you how Gideon was doing it too. Overthinking can look like a lot of different things. It could be like obsessing about tomorrow. What if this happens? What if that happens? It could be thinking about like, well, do I really have the traits? Do I have the capability? Am I trained? Am I good enough? That's another way it could look. Also, it could look like, all right, I have all these options. So now I'm paralyzed by this, all the just totally overwhelming number of options, paralysis by analysis. So whatever your flavor of overthinking is, we're going to use something. We're going to take stuff from his story that I think is going to apply to you. So, for example, in his story, God told him, like, look, I need you to be a warrior. I need you to go lead some troops and fight against this group of enemy soldiers. They're called the Midianites. And from the very jump, God called Gideon a mighty warrior. And up until then, there was no context. Like there was no reason for God to call him that. He had not proven himself in any other battle. It was just a dude. So God comes to him in the form of an angel and says, all right, mighty warrior, here's what I need you to do. So first and foremost, God's speaking to him as an identity, to that identity piece of him. Not here's the tools I need you to take, any duties, any actions, just like this is who you are. I need you to be really clear about who you are before you try to set out on this journey. All right, so I'm taking Gideon and I'm going to tell his story like as if he were with us today in modern terms and had like a modern job. So a lot of times we can think of Bible people as like fictional characters that we can't really relate to. So let's take it and let's pretend Gideon's like working at, I don't know, like Google, and he's some sort of project coordinator. The next project's got to be moving all the time, and there's deadlines and all kinds of stress on him, right? Here's what I would tell Gideon if he were sitting with me one-on-one in a therapist office. And these are the things that I'll see, like, all right, here's what I see you doing that probably not really the best moves for you if you're trying to reduce your overthinking. And then here are some of the things that you're probably doing pretty well that you maybe need to do more of that we can all learn from. When God told Gideon to go fight the Midianites, he gave him 32,000 troops at first. But then he said, no, actually, I don't want you to have 32,000. I want you to pare it down to 300. Because if you have all 32,000 troops and you win, you're going to think you did it in your own strength. You go in there and you fight and you win with 300 people, you're going to know it was me, God, that gave you the power to do that. So God is telling him, like, all right, reduce the number here so you can focus on the most elite soldiers, and you can get things, at least from an earthly perspective, more manageable, but also so that you'll see you can rely on me and my power and not on your own strength. So if you flip it, the psychological concept for some of this is called cognitive load reduction. There's two ways this works. When you got so many thoughts going on in your head, it's just too much. It's overwhelming. There's thousands of them. And you got to do something to pare it down, to reduce them from what feels like 32,000 thoughts to just a few. So I want you to start writing down the thoughts that are harassing you the most. Writing them down does two things. Your brain can see it, and then it can start to realize like, oh, okay, this little thought that I'm seeing on the paper, it's not as big as it seemed in my brain. And then also you can then decide, all right, can I do anything about this thing, the thought that's harassing me? Is there any action I could take? It also, research shows, when you write them down, it actually cleanses it out of your brain faster than trying to do typing it or something like that. So I want you to make sure you write it. Another way this cognitive load reduction works is if you've got people that are giving you advice and telling you what to do and giving you feedback about the situation, that's great. We love them, but we want you to reduce them too. I want you to get down to the one or two people that you trust the most for this particular situation, because having too many people giving you their opinions, that's just too many cooks in the kitchen. And it's just going to feed your overthinking and paralysis by analysis. So pare down the thoughts, cross off the thoughts that you can't control, leave the ones you can control, and pare those down to the one or two thoughts that you can do something about and take some action towards, and then pare down the voices in your life, whether the actual mentors, family, friends, whatever, or even maybe you're watching too much social media trying to get some sort of input from that. Pare it down to one or two people, one or two sources. That cognitive load reduction is going to make you feel lighter mentally, and it's also going to give you mental clarity. All right, next, when Gideon was trying to figure out if he was even hearing God right about this whole battle situation, he said, all right, Lord, I need you to confirm this. So I'm going to put a fleece out front of my house, and I want the fleece to be wet, and I want the ground around it to be dry. And then I'll know that I'm hearing you. Well, God does just that. The fleece was wet, the ground was dry. He says, all right, thank you, but that's still not enough. I mean, he's human. We all keep second guessing, like, is this really right? Am I really hearing the right answer? So he says, all right, this time I want the fleece to be dry and the ground around it to be wet. Then I'll know that I'm really hearing you and that this is what you want me to do. Sure enough, next morning, fleece is dry, ground is wet. This time it hits. Gideon knows that, all right, now this is what I'm supposed to do. Psychological term for this is hypothesis testing. You got to become a little bit of a scientist here. You can't just write down or think about what might happen and what you think the possible outcomes are. You got to take one little step. So in the modern world, maybe that looks like making the phone call, or maybe that looks like sending an email or gathering some data. Just take some sort of action, just even a little step. And that's going to tell your nervous system, like, all right, hey, we're taking some action here. We're not just preparing and doing nothing, because your nervous system wants you to act. And it's going to calm down a little bit when it sees you starting to take a step. So right before the battle was supposed to start, Gideon gets nervous, the troops get nervous, and God tells Gideon, all right, I get that you're nervous. Go down and spy on the Midianite army and just listen to what you hear them saying. Well, the thing that he ends up hearing them say gives him a ton of confidence. I'm skipping parts of the story here, but he heard them say things out loud that helped his nervous system calm down. And so the point here is, or the psychological connection here is, it's called affect labeling. So whatever it is you're afraid of, I want you to say it out loud. And when you say it out loud, that actually reduces your amygdala activation, and it tells your nervous system to calm down some, because when we say it out loud, it's similar to writing it out. You can probably, if you really want to do both, that would be the most powerful powerful punch to this. Because when you do that, your brain hears it out loud, and it separates it and differentiates it from just another one of those thoughts that's flying around. And then when it hears it, it's almost like taking out an AirPod and looking at it and be like, oh, this is the thought that was bugging me. Well, this thing isn't as scary as I thought anymore, because I put words to it. So affect labeling, when you put a label to it, you put those words to it, it actually shrinks the anxiety. And when we shift back to when Gideon was first being told by God what he'd want him to do, the first thing God actually told him wasn't a set of instructions. It was, he called him a name. He called him Mighty Warrior. And again, this is before Gideon had ever proved himself, had ever done anything to show that he was a mighty warrior. But God wanted him to know before he entered into this difficulty, hey, this is who you are. Your identity is based on what I say about you, not on what your performance is. Similar to Jesus, before Jesus did any miracles, God the Father told him when he got baptized, he said, you're my beloved son, and I'm pleased with you. This is who you are, and I'm already pleased with you before you do any sort of actions, before you impress anybody and spread the fame. None of that mattered yet because God told him, like, all right, your identity is already set. Psychology of this is called values-based identity. And so the research tells us that when we have a stable sense of who we are, it reduces our anxiety, reduces our overthinking and that rumination. So I want you to figure out, if you don't really know who you are, you don't have a strong sense of your identity yet, start exploring that. Start wrestling that. Start wrestling with that. Ask some questions, do some digging, because this is a foundational issue for us. So things like, if you really believe I'm capable, I'm growing, and that failure is just a feedback, it's not final, it's just data that I can use to make adjustments. If you really internalize those at a deep level in your soul, man, you're going to have peace and you're going to have a lot of success. All right, in the lead up before Gideon was supposed to go out and take on the Midianites, he was scared. He didn't have a whole lot of confidence. He knew what God had told him about himself, but he still needed something to prove to himself that he had it. So God told him, all right, I want you to tear down the altar of this false god named Baal. And that was going to be a scary thing because the people that were worshiping this false god, they were going to be not only upset, but they actually might start a war against him. So Gideon didn't know how it was going to turn out, but he did it anyway. And he actually then turned into, it gave him some confidence, and he got this reputation around the city for being bold, like being the one guy who would step up and stand up to these people. So that gave him the boost of confidence that he needed to then take the next step, which was going to war against the Midianites. And the psychological perspective on this, or the psychological version of this, is behavioral activation. It's part of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. When we just activate, when we do something, courage grows. If we're waiting to move, if we're waiting on courage and then take action, that's not going to happen. You got to activate. You got to do something, and then the courage is going to follow that. So start small, and then get a little bigger, and then a little bigger, and then every step you take, that courage and that confidence is just going to keep on growing, and then you can handle anything because you've already seen what you've been able to do in the past, and then you've also seen that God's going to be faithful, and he's going to come through for you and give you his supernatural power as you step out and take action in that obedience. And the very last thing that Gideon did before he went into battle was he worshiped. All right, here's the deal. That worship, that allowed God's presence to come into him. It took his mind off of all of the fears and the what ifs might happen in the battle the next day. And it put his mind into gratitude toward God and all the things that God had done for him up to this point. So it reset his brain, put it on things he was thankful for. And the psychological tactic behind this is called gratitude practice and positive reappraisal. It's just a fancy way of saying that when we worship and pray, it puts our mind on things that we're grateful for. Maybe, again, things that maybe God has already done for you and to you and through you. Maybe it's just things you're grateful for about somebody in your life. But it helps us calm our nervous system. It helps the anxiety come down. And it really, really turns down the volume on the overthinking. You can't overthink and be grateful at the same time. Your brain just can't do it. It actually happens. Those two things happen in the same part of your brain. So if you choose in worship and gratitude, your brain's going to stay on that, and your brain literally can't overthink. Now, obviously, we're not perfect. Our brain's going to try to switch back into overthinking, but it can't do both at the same time. So as much as you can, worship, be grateful, and you'll see the peace come from that. Think about it this way. We are so trained to focus on what's going wrong and what we don't have and what we wish we had and what we wish was different. It's just, that's part of the way our brain has worked. It's kind of a survival mechanism to warn us about potential threats. But we can start building the habit of focusing on, hey, here's what I do have. Here's what's going right. Here's the people that are in my life that I'm really grateful for. And it's a habit that can be built. You start building that habit, you're going to start feeling better. And a lot of times we're such in a, I don't know, in this rut because the influences around us maybe always talking about what's going wrong in their life or some sort of complaint. And whatever we see on social media, it's just reinforcing what we already have told it in the past that we like. So there's a lot of forces, not to mention the spiritual warfare angle. There's a lot of forces trying to pull our brain into what's going wrong. And truthfully, this is both scriptural and psychological. Whatever you focus on the most is what you're going to get more of. And the psychological term for that is reticular activating system. Whatever you're looking for, if you're looking for the things that are going to go right, or if you're looking for the things that have already gone right, it's going to naturally put you on alert for the things that are also going to go right. Because you could easily overlook the positive things that happen in a day if you're looking for the negative things. So one of my habits is I wake up every day, and as soon as my feet hit the floor, I write down on a little index card, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened the day before. And that puts me in a good mood because I can relive those moments. And it also puts me on the lookout for, all right, what are the next 3 things that are going to be happening today that I can be grateful for as well. So one of the things I love about Gideon's story and so many of the stories in the Bible is that it shows that God already knew science before we ever knew that it was a thing. He already not discovered it, he actually created it. He's the original scientist. And then we get to put our psychological terms to these principles that were always in existence. And I geek out on that stuff because, yeah, we've had amazing research and amazing terms and frameworks and interventions in the whole psychology world, and all that's fantastic. And it's fun for me to see, it was always here. It's just waiting to be discovered. It's kind of like the solar system has always been out there. God was just waiting on men to be able to build a powerful enough telescope to see what was out there. So these psychological terms have always been in the reality. They've always been present. And it's just taken man enough time to realize, oh yeah, this is how our brain works and how our nervous system works. So I love that aspect. Now, specifically with overthinking, a few things I hope you remember above everything else. It's not about trying harder to not think or not overthink. That's never going to work. You're going to drive yourself nuts. It's about cutting the noise. It's about clarifying some action steps. And then it's about remembering who you are and that your identity and your value is not connected to what you do and the results that you produce. So Gideon modeled that for us. He modeled mostly helpful steps, and some steps that he modeled weren't so helpful, but it shows how human he is and that we are, and God gets it, and that's why we need grace and mercy. Other thing I want you to do is pick just one of these. We went through a lot of potential steps that you could take, and if you try to do them all, I doubt that you're going to be able to succeed in that. I think you'll probably get overwhelmed. So I just want you to start small. Just pick one. Pick one action today out of what we just went through, and just try it. Just try it for a couple of days and see what it does. All these steps aren't going to work equally for you. You're going to find 1 or 2 that work best. There are going to probably be 1 or 2 that don't work at all for you, but you got to figure out which ones those are. So let me know. What do you want to know about in the overthinking world? We didn't cover nearly everything in the whole overthinking universe. There will be more videos I'll do on this one because, again, it's the thing that people ask me the most about. Also, what tips have helped you that I didn't mention? Again, I want this to be a 2-way street. I want you to know me. I want to know you. I want to know what your journey is like. Let's all keep being legendary and keep striving for more, and I'll see you next time.